Equal Education is gearing up to conduct site visits at various schools across the country with the aim of eradicating pit toilets once and for all. The civil society group is accusing Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga of not taking responsibility for the many dangers posed by pit latrines. Adding to this is the department's commitment to eradicate them by 2025 now. There's less than 2 years left to meet that promise. Many worry that this will just be another publicity stunt since the department has already failed to meet 2 infrastructure deadlines backed by law. I'm joined now by Equal Education's Head of Research, Elizabeth Biney, who joins us from King Williamstown in the Eastern Cape this evening. Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time. I must admit, about a week or so ago, if not longer, when we heard the news of yet another toddler who lost their life at the bottomless pit of a pit latrine, I really thought we really can't be having this conversation again, especially after very strong deadlines were set by the Education Department. They even gave the program to eliminate these pit latrines a snazzy name, an abbreviated name as well. And yet here we sit and all the Education Department has done is just extended their own deadline. Surely there are serious questions to be asked here about monitoring, but more importantly, about accountability and the lack thereof.
Yes, thank you for having us. I mean, this conversation is, quite frankly, very ridiculous to be having in 2023 when clearly the school infrastructure law says that pit toilets were a thing of the past as of 2013. So nearly 10 years after the law was introduced, we were supposed to have done away with pit toilets. And here we are still discussing this unsafe, illegal, undignified structures in schools. And all we get from the department is lip service every time we raise the matter with them. So indeed, we have a government and a department that do not have the political will to actually deliver on their commitments that they've clearly put down in law that they're going to do. So something needs to give. We need to stop talking. We need to stop giving them the free rein to obviously make promises and break their promises and get them to actually do and fix the schools that we need these learners to succeed in.
It's very easy to turn this into a numbers game while forgetting the very emotional core of the story. Young lives, vulnerable lives being put at risk in spaces where they're supposed to be at their safest at school. But your organization has made it your work over the last few years to really keep tabs on those numbers, the numbers of pit latrines in the various provinces, what's been eradicated and what still needs to be done. And those numbers haven't always correlated with the numbers being put out via statements by the Education Department. Your organization has said you're now gearing up to conduct site visits, grassroots site visits across the province. Tell us why it's important for you to do that at this stage.
Because we have a situation in the country where the data that is presented or provided to the National Department of Education from provincial education departments do not always align with what is happening in schools at the school level and in the lives of learners. So the department will have that currently there are only about maybe 5,000 schools across the country that have these unsafe structures present or in use. But when you go to schools and you actually observe for yourself, you monitor the lived experiences, you realize that the numbers might be even higher. So we have a situation where even where there are proper toilet infrastructure, either there's no maintenance culture. So we are having a situation where there are breakdowns and essentially a flushing toilet has been broken down for so long, it is a glorified pit toilet now. So we are not really capturing the real story or the current situation, because the data that is provided is always outdated or it's a conservative estimate of what is really happening at the school level.
So where to now? Because clearly we're dealing with a ministry who is adamant that they are working according to their own deadlines and their own schedule, because they've just been able to shift a very, very important deadline by 2 years. Does your organization continue to try and get your messaging through to the education department, or do you now try and go above their heads to try and get accountability at a higher level of government?
So for us, we try to explore all strategies to actually get through to the department before we engage, other accountability measures, such as even approaching portfolio committees of education, or even going through the legal channel to get the courts to actually hold these departments to account. We've tried on a number of occasions to, raise this matter with the department. We've written letters, we've marched. So for us, the long-term advocacy strategy is still in play, but at some point, the strategy will have to change slight course, and it might even become go through the courts, because we keep seeing a pattern of behavior that actually does not show that they are planning to take their legal responsibility towards learners as seriously as they should. We keep seeing them missing deadlines and pushing the goalposts and deciding when they are going to deliver on the right things according to law. So at some point, all our advocacy efforts and all our engagement efforts will, if it proves to be of no use or of no effect, we will have no other choice but to obviously approach the court to get some relief for learners, because we cannot wait indefinitely, or we cannot give them multiple chances to decide when they think it is safe for learners to have proper, safe sanitation at schools.
I see that the National Freedom Party has called for pit latrine toilets in schools, or the disaster around it, to be declared a national disaster and to be prioritized. Are you surprised that this issue has not become more of a political issue, that we haven't seen more opposition parties using this, I suppose, to score political points, but in some way, shape or form, at least keep this on the national platform of conversation, and in that way try and get a government's attention to this important thing? Or is it because most of these pit latrines are found in rural parts of our various provinces, and therefore they don't think it's an important enough issue?
I mean, if you look at it historically, I think it's because, it's in these so-called rural provinces and mostly working class Black communities. It has not always, excited the right kind of urgency or emotion for government to address this matter, except when obviously there's a tragic incident related to a learner passing away because of it, or in conjunction with it. But what we are seeing currently, and probably you are right in alluding to the fact that there's politics involved here. So obviously we are heading towards elections next year, and all political parties are looking to, score points with all the issues that are close to the heart of the grassroots. So if this is perhaps one of the issues that political parties are using to score political points, for us it's neither here nor there, and we don't want to be engaged or in the middle of a political tug of war. What we are saying is that at the core of this issue is not a political issue, but a human rights crisis. And in that, Black learners, and in fact, even communities that that use these unsafe structures deserve some dignity, they deserve protection, and this issue needs to be addressed once and for all, not when there's elections coming up, or not when there's a tragedy related to the matter. So we don't want to be pulled into a political story where we know we are siding with this, or this person is furthering our agenda. So we tend to agree with. But at the core of this is a human rights issue, and it is not fair, it is not right for other people to suffer just so it is seen as, oh, this is the thing that this party is doing, or this is what the government is doing ahead of an election. It is just a right and a morally correct thing to do by removing these unsafe structures out of these communities and the schools.
You spoke earlier, just before I let you go, Elizabeth, you spoke earlier about how important it is also to bring across the lived experiences of those communities where their children are going to schools, where they only have pit latrines as their a hygiene option. And you spoke about the need for this to be seen as a human rights issue. In those communities, is there enough awareness that this is a human right for their children to have proper sanitation and toilets for them to use? And is that also part of the education that's needed at that level?
Yeah, so when you look at these communities or this issue, right, we tend to have a situation where the department pits rights against each other. So when we are talking about the need for safe sanitation infrastructure, they will always introduce another issue that is supposedly more important or of more urgency than toilets. So it's like, at least you have a school, at least there's a toilet there. We are working to provide teachers, or we are trying to provide textbooks or something of the other. So the issue is that they create an either-or situation for communities, which then, gives them an option of they have to choose, and not an and situation where it's like you can have safe sanitation, proper teachers, textbooks, better schools, so that they're not being they unfairly pitted against each other in terms of the rights. And so community members tend to obviously pick the battle that they can fight. So I think there's also a need for an education and a conscientization for community members to understand that all their rights that are that are for them, whether for their children or in the Constitution, are comprehensive, and they don't have to pick and choose which one they must fight for or they must defend.
We're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and insights. As always, Equal Education's Head of Research, Elizabeth Biney, joining us virtually there.